Captain Jake Mitchell stared at the emergency beacon flashing red on his ship's control panel. The signal came from Kepler 442b, a small mining colony on the edge of known space. His crew of 12 had been patrolling this sector for 3 months, without seeing anything more dangerous than space pirates. "Captain, we're getting a distress call," said Lieutenant Ben Harper from the communications station. His voice carried a note of concern that made Jake look up from his daily reports. "Put it through the speakers," Jake ordered. Setting down his coffee mug, the bridge filled with static, then a voice broke through. It was high-pitched and desperate, speaking in the Universal Translator's mechanical tone. "This is Kepler Colony. Under attack, ... They came from nowhere. Oh God, they're in the building, ... Help us, ... Anyone, ... Please." The transmission cut to screaming, then silence. Jake felt his stomach drop. In his 15 years of service, he had heard many distress calls, but this one was different. There was something in that voice, a terror, so pure it made his skin crawl. How long to reach Kepler 442b? He asked his navigator, Sarah Young. "At maximum speed, sir, about 18 hours, she replied, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "Set course immediately and send a message to Fleet Command. Tell them we're responding to an emergency at Kepler Colony." The next 18 hours passed slowly. Jake's ship, the New Horizon, was a medium-sized exploration vessel with enough firepower to handle pirates but nothing more serious. His crew was experienced, but they were explorers, not soldiers. As they approached the Kepler system, Jake noticed something wrong. The colony should have been sending out routine signals, but his communications officer heard nothing. No shipping broadcasts, no maintenance reports, no chatter from the mining operations. "It's like the whole place just went silent," Ben said, adjusting his headset. The planet looked normal from space. It was a brown and gray world with a thin atmosphere, dotted with mining facilities and small settlements. But as they got closer, Jake saw that something was very wrong. The main settlement was dark. No lights, no movement, no signs of life. Smoke rose from several buildings, and even from orbit they could see massive holes torn in the sides of structures. "Sarah, scan for life signs," Jake ordered. She worked quietly for several minutes, then looked up with a pale face. "Sir, I'm reading one very weak signal from the main settlement. Everything else is ... Jake felt his hands shake slightly. "A colony of 8,000 people, gone in less than 24 hours. Prepare a landing party. Then Sarah and Rodriguez. You're with me. Everyone else stays with the ship and keeps the engines ready." They landed near the main settlement as the local sun was setting. The place looked like a war zone. Buildings had been torn apart as if by giant claws. Strange burn marks covered the ground, and there was a smell in the air that made Jake's nose wrinkle. "What could do this?" whispered Rodriguez, the ship's engineer. He was a tough man who had seen combat, but his voice shook as he looked around. They found Badas everywhere. The colonists were mostly Altarians, a peaceful species that looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin. But these Badas were different. They looked ... drained. Their skin was gray and wrinkled, as if something had sucked all the life out of them. "Captain, over here." Sarah called from near a collapsed building. They found the survivor in what used to be the colony's command center. He was an Altarian, barely alive, lying among the wreckage. His blue skin was almost white, and his breathing was shallow. Jake knelt beside him. "What happened here? Who did this?" The Altarian's eyes opened slowly. They were filled with a terror, so deep that Jake had to look away. The alien's mouth moved, trying to speak. "Take your time," Jake said gently. "We're here to help." The alien grabbed Jake's arm with surprising strength. They ... They came from the dark," he whispered. 12. Feet tall ... Claws like knives ... They could walk through walls ... Jake felt his blood run cold. "Who? What were they?" "We tried to fight. Our weapons did nothing. They just laughed ... Double quote. The alien's grip tightened. "They hunted us ... For sport ... Like animals ... What species were they?" Jake asked urgently. The alien's eyes went wide with remembered terror. He spoke one word so quietly that Jake almost missed it. Kethmori. Then he died. Jake stood up slowly. He had heard that name before in whispered conversations and old space legends. The Kethmori were supposed to be a myth, a story told to frighten children. Captain, you need to see this. Ben called from across the room. Jake walked over to where his communications officer was standing. On the wall, carved deep into the metal, were symbols. They looked like claw marks, but they were too precise, too organized. It's writing, Ben said. The universal translator can't read it, but it's definitely language. Jake studied the marks. They were carved at least 8 feet off the ground, and the metal around them was partially melted. Whatever had made these marks was big, strong, and had claws that could cut through reinforced steel. Sir, we should leave, Rodriguez said nervously, if these things are still around. Jake nodded. They had found what they came for, but it raised more questions than it answered. As they walked back to their ship, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Once back on the New Horizon, Jake immediately sent a full report to Fleet Command. He described the destroyed colony, the survivor's story, and the strange writing on the wall. He also requested immediate backup and suggested that all colonies in the sector be evacuated. The response came back 6 hours later. Fleet Command was taking his report seriously, very seriously. Captain Mitchell, came the voice of Admiral Lisa Carter herself. You are ordered to return to Earth immediately. Do not stop at any other colonies. Do not respond to any other distress. Calls, come home now. Jake had never heard the Admiral sound scared before. That worried him more than anything else. As the New Horizon jumped into hyperspace. Heading for Earth, Jake looked out at the stars and wondered what humanity was about to face. The galaxy suddenly felt much more dangerous than it had that morning. Behind them, on the dead world of Kepler 442b, something moved in the shadows between the ruined buildings. Something tall and dark with claws that gleamed in the starlight. It watched the human ship disappear into hyperspace, then melted back into the darkness. The hunt was about to begin. Admiral Lisa Carter sat in the war room deep inside Earth's military headquarters. The holographic display showed a map of the galaxy with red dots marking every place the Kethmori had been spotted. There were 17 dots now, and they were moving toward the core worlds where billions of people lived. How long do we have? She asked Dr. Amy Foster, the xenobiologist who had been studying alien species for 20 years. Dr. Foster looked tired. She had been working for 3 days straight since Captain Mitchell's report arrived. Based on their movement pattern, they'll reach the first major human colony in 6 weeks. Earth itself in maybe 4 months. Colonel Ryan Brooks, a tall man, with gray hair and scars from the border wars, leaned forward. What do we know about them? Really know, not just stories. Dr. Foster activated the display. A 3-dimensional image appeared showing a creature that looked like a nightmare. It stood 12 feet tall with long arms that ended in claws like curved knives. Its skin was black and seemed to absorb light. Its face was almost human but wrong, with eyes that glowed red in the darkness. The Kethmori have been the galaxy's apex predators for over 3,000 years, Dr. Foster explained. They're stronger than any known species, faster than most, and they have 3 abilities that make them nearly impossible to fight. She pointed to the creature's claws. First, their claws can cut through almost any material. We've seen them slice through starship hulls like paper. Second, they can phase through solid matter for short periods. Walls, armor, shields, nothing stops them, Colonel Brooks frowned. And the third ability? They can sense fear, Dr. Foster said quietly. Not just see it or smell it. They can actually feel the fear of other living beings through some kind of bio-electromagnetic field. When they hunt, they know exactly where their prey is and how scared they are. Admiral Carter stood up and paced to the window. Outside, she could see the lights of the city where millions of people lived normal lives, unaware that death was coming for them. How has no one ever fought them successfully? Because fear paralyzes most species, Dr. Foster replied. When the Kethmori appear, their prey either freezes or runs. Both reactions make them easy targets. The fear-sensing ability gives them such an advantage that they've never had to develop complex tactics. They just hunt. But they're not invincible, Colonel Brooks said. Captain Mitchell's report mentioned that the survivor was able to speak before dying. They don't kill instantly, Dr. Foster nodded. They seem to enjoy the hunt. Reports from other species suggest they like to play with their prey before killing them. It's not just about food or territory, it's about dominance. Admiral Carter turned back to the group. What about weapons? What have other species tried? Everything, Dr. Foster said sadly. Energy weapons, kinetic weapons, poison gas, nuclear weapons, even biological warfare. Nothing works. Their skin seems to absorb or deflect most energy attacks. Their speed lets them dodge kinetic weapons. And their phasing ability means they can escape from any trap. The room fell silent. Finally, Colonel Brooks spoke up. There has to be something. Some weakness we haven't found. Dr. Foster hesitated, then brought up a new display. This one showed brain scans from different species. There might be something, but it's just a theory. Look at these brain patterns. The display showed the neural activity of various alien species when they encountered the Kethmori. In every case, the patterns were similar. Fear responses activated so strongly that the creatures couldn't think clearly or move effectively. Now look at this, Dr. Foster said, bringing up a human brain scan. This is from one of our soldiers during combat training. Notice how different the pattern is. Colonel Brooks studied the display. The fear response is there, but it's not overwhelming the rest of the brain. Exactly. Humans have a unique neurological structure. We evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. When we encounter danger, we don't just feel fear. We also feel excitement, curiosity, and most importantly, aggression. Our brains are wired to fight back. Admiral Carter felt a spark of hope. Are you saying humans might be immune to their fear sensing? Not immune, but resistant. When a human faces a Kethmori, the creature would sense fear, yes, but also determination, anger, and the desire to fight. They've never encountered that combination before. It might confuse them. Colonel Brooks was already thinking like a soldier. We need to test this theory. Can we capture a Kethmori? That's never been done, Dr. Foster said. But there might be another way. We have surveillance footage from the Kepler colony. We could use that to run psychological tests on our soldiers. Admiral Carter made her decision. Do it. I want a full psychological profile of how humans react to the Kethmori. And I want volunteers for a reconnaissance mission. I'll lead it, Colonel Brooks said immediately. Ryan, you're too valuable to risk, Admiral Carter replied. With respect, Admiral, I'm the best we have for this kind of mission. And if Dr. Foster is right, my experience in combat might actually help. Dr. Foster pulled up more data. There's something else. The Kethmori have been hunting the same way for thousands of years. They've never had to adapt or change tactics because nothing has ever fought back effectively. That could be a weakness. How so? Admiral Carter asked. They're overconfident. They expect their prey to be helpless. If we can surprise them, even once, it might give us an advantage. Colonel Brooks was already planning. I'll need a small team. People with combat experience who can stay calm under pressure. I recommend Sergeant Kelly Davis, Admiral Carter said. She's Special Forces, served in 3 wars, and her psychological profile shows unusually low fear responses. Good. Who else? Lieutenant Chris Johnson from Tactical? He's young but brilliant, and he's been studying Kethmori attack patterns since we got Mitchell's report. Dr. Foster looked worried. This is incredibly dangerous. If I'm wrong about human psychology, you'll all be killed. Colonel Brooks smiled grimly. Doctor, I've been in situations where I was supposed to die many times. The difference is, this time we might actually learn something useful. Admiral Carter activated the communication system. Captain Mitchell, report to the war room immediately. You're going back out there. 20 minutes later, Captain Mitchell stood before them. He looked tired but determined. What are my orders, Admiral? You're going to take Colonel Brooks and his team to the next system where the Kethmori are expected to appear. Your mission is to observe and gather intelligence. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Understood. When do we leave? Tomorrow. Morning. This might be humanity's only chance to learn how to fight these things. As the meeting broke up, Dr. Foster pulled Admiral Carter aside. Lisa, there's something else I didn't mention. The psychological profiles show that humans don't just resist fear. We actually become more dangerous when we're threatened. Most species become weaker when scared. We become stronger. Admiral Carter nodded slowly. Let's hope that's enough. Outside. The city lights twinkled peacefully in the darkness, but somewhere in the black void between the stars, ancient hunters were moving closer to Earth, unaware that for the first time in 3,000 years they were about to encounter prey that would fight back. Colonel Ryan Brooks crouched behind a pile of metal debris, watching the Kethmori hunting pack move through Titan Station. The mining facility had been home to 3,000 people just hours ago. Now it was a slaughterhouse. How many do you count? Whispered Sergeant Kelly Davis, lying flat beside him with her rifle ready. 7, Brooks replied quietly. 3 big ones and 4 smaller ones. The big one in front must be their leader. Lieutenant Chris Johnson was recording everything on his scanner from their hiding spot behind a broken wall. The leader is at least 13 feet tall. Look at the size of those claws. Brooks had seen many dangerous things in his 30 years of military service, but the Kethmori were different. They moved with a confidence that was almost casual. They were not hunting desperately for food. They were playing. The pack leader stood in the center of the main plaza, its red eyes scanning the area. It made a sound that was part growl, part laugh. The sound made Brooks' skin crawl, but he noticed something important. He was scared, but he could still think clearly. His hands were steady. There, Davis pointed to a group of buildings where lights were still on. Survivors. About 50 colonists had barricaded themselves inside the station's main cafeteria. They had welded the doors shut and were trying to send out distress signals. The Kethmori leader tilted its head as if listening to something the humans could. Not here. It knows exactly where they are, Johnson whispered. Dr. Foster was right about the fear sensing. The pack moved toward the cafeteria with no hurry. They knew their prey could not escape. One of the smaller Kethmori walked straight through the metal wall like it was made of air, its phasing ability making the barricade useless. Screaming came from inside the building. We have to do something, Davis said, raising her rifle. No, Brooks ordered firmly. We're here to observe. If we reveal ourselves now, we learn nothing. Davis gritted her teeth but obeyed. Brooks understood her frustration. Every instinct told him to help those people, but the mission was bigger than saving 50 lives. They needed to learn how to save billions. The colonists burst out of the cafeteria, running in panic. The Kethmori followed slowly, like cats playing with mice. Brooks watched carefully as the creatures hunted. They were fast when they wanted to be, but most of the time they just walked. Their prey was always too scared to fight back effectively. A group of colonists had found some mining equipment and were trying to use it as weapons. The laser cutters should have been able to hurt the Kethmori, but when the beams hit the creatures' skin, they just scattered harmlessly. Their skin absorbs energy, Johnson noted, recording everything. Just like the report said, the pack leader approached the armed colonists. It made that horrible laughing sound again, then stood completely still. The colonists fired every weapon they had at it. Lasers, plasma bolts, even some kind of sonic weapon. Nothing worked. The creature let them exhaust their weapons, then walked forward. It grabbed the nearest colonist and lifted him off the ground with one massive claw. The man screamed, but the sound was cut short. Brooks forced himself to keep watching. The Kethmori was not just killing. It was showing off. It wanted the other colonists to see how helpless they were. They feed on fear as much as flesh, he whispered to his team. This is psychological warfare. The hunt continued for 2 hours. The Kethmori killed slowly, making sure each death terrified the survivors even more. By the end, there were only a handful of colonists left, hiding in the deepest parts of the mining complex. Doc Brooks was about to signal his team to retreat when something went wrong. Johnson's scanner made a small beeping sound. In the silence of the ruined station, it was as loud as a gunshot. The pack leader's head snapped toward their hiding spot. Its red eyes locked onto their position. "Move!" Brooks shouted. They ran toward their ship, but one of the smaller Kethmori was faster. It appeared in front of them, phasing through a wall. Davis reacted instantly, firing her specially modified plasma rifle. The weapon had been designed by Earth's best scientists specifically for this mission. The plasma bolt hit the creature in the chest. Instead of scattering harmlessly, it burned through the skin. The Kethmori let out a shriek of pain and surprise. "It worked," Johnson yelled. "The plasma actually hurt it." But their celebration was short-lived. The wounded creature's scream had alerted the pack. The leader was coming toward them. Moving faster than anything that size should be able to move, Davis stood her ground, firing repeatedly. 2 more shots hit the smaller Kethmori, dropping it to the ground. But now the pack leader was only 20 feet away. Brooks had faced death many times, but this was different. The creature was not just deadly. It was ancient evil given form. Every primitive instinct in his brain screamed at him to run. But he did not run. Instead, he felt something else rising inside him. Anger. These things had been terrorizing the galaxy for thousands of years, and no one had ever stood up to them. Well, that was about to change. The pack leader stopped 10 feet away. Its red eyes stared at Brooks with what looked like confusion. The creature tilted its head, the way a dog might when hearing a strange sound. "It cannot read you properly," Davis said in amazement. "Look at its face, it's confused." The creature tried to sense Brooks' fear, but what it found was different from anything it had experienced in 3,000 years of hunting. Yes, there was fear, but there was also determination, anger, and something else. The desire to fight back. Brooks pulled out his combat knife. It was a simple steel blade, nothing special. But as he held it, he felt something change inside him. He was no longer prey. He was a predator. The Kethmori leader made a sound that was half roar, half question. It had never encountered a creature that did not cower in its presence. "Come on then," Brooks said quietly. "Let's see what you're really made of." The creature lunged forward with incredible speed. Brooks dodged to the side the way he had been trained. The massive claws missed him by inches. As the creature passed, he slashed with his knife, cutting a deep line across its arm. The Kethmori spun around, black blood dripping from the wound. For the first time in its long life, it looked uncertain. Davis fired her plasma rifle again, hitting the creature in the shoulder. It stumbled backward, its confidence finally broken. "We need to go now," Johnson warned. "The other pack members are coming." They reached their ship just as the remaining Kethmori arrived. As the New Horizon lifted off, Brooks looked back at Titan Station. They had learned something important today. The Kethmori could be hurt. They could be confused. And most importantly, they could be made to feel fear. "Did you get everything recorded?" he asked Johnson. "Every second of it, sir," Brooks smiled grimly. "Good, because we just proved that the galaxy's apex predators are not as invincible as they thought, and now we know how to fight them." As their ship jumped into hyperspace, heading back to Earth, none of them noticed the single Kethmori that had been watching from the shadows. It had seen everything, and now it was very, very angry. Admiral Lisa Carter stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars of the Vega system grow larger on the view screen. Behind her, Captain Jake Mitchell was preparing his crew for what might be humanity's most important battle. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said Commander Tony Walsh from his position at the tactical station. Carter nodded. "Operation Apex Killer is a go. All ships engage the enemy." The human fleet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the usual heavy battleships, Carter had chosen smaller, faster vessels filled with Marines trained specifically to fight the Kethmori. Each ship carried new weapons designed from the data Colonel Brooks had brought back from Titan Station. "Contact," announced Lieutenant Sarah Martinez from the sensor station. "3 Kethmori ships bearing 270, they're moving to intercept." Carter studied the enemy ships on her screen. They were dark, organic-looking things that seemed to absorb light. They moved with the same casual confidence the Kethmori showed on the ground. "They think we're going to run," she said to Mitchell. "Every other species has run from them." Mitchell smiled grimly. "They're about to learn that humans are different." The Kethmori ships opened fire first. Strange purple beams lanced out toward the human fleet. Most ships would have tried to dodge or return fire at long range. Instead, Carter ordered her ships to charge straight at the enemy. "All ships, ramming speed. Get us close enough to board." The human vessels dove toward the Kethmori ships like hungry wolves. The enemy fire was powerful, but the human ships were small and fast. They weaved between the energy beams, getting closer with each second. "Boarding range in 30 seconds, Martinez reported. Carter activated the ship-wide communication system. "All Marines, prepare for boarding action. Remember your training. These creatures can be killed." The first human ship reached the lead Kethmori vessel. Instead of trying to blast through its hull, the human captain activated a new weapon. Magnetic harpoons shot out, locking the two ships together. Cutting charges blew holes in both hulls. Simultaneously, human Marines poured through the breach. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez led the first boarding party onto the alien ship. The corridors were dark and filled with a strange mist that made it hard to see. She had trained for this moment for 6 months, but nothing could have prepared her for actually being inside a Kethmori vessel. "Stay together," she whispered to her team through their helmet radios. "They hunt alone, but we hunt in packs." The first Kethmori they encountered was waiting for them around a corner. It was smaller than the ones Colonel Brooks had fought, but still over 10 feet tall. Its red eyes glowed in the darkness as it studied the humans. Martinez could feel its alien mind trying to read her emotions. It was looking for fear, for the paralysis that had always made its prey easy to kill. Instead, it found something that confused it. The human was scared, yes, but she was also excited. She wanted to fight. The creature hesitated for just a moment. That was enough. Martinez fired her plasma rifle twice. Both shots hit the Kethmori center mass. It stumbled backward, black blood spraying from the wounds. Before it could recover, 2 more Marines opened fire. The creature fell. "First kill confirmed," Martinez reported. "The new weapons work." All across the Kethmori ship, similar battles were taking place. The aliens were stronger and faster than humans, but they were not used to fighting enemies that worked together. Every time a Kethmori tried to hunt a single human, it found itself surrounded by a team. More importantly, the humans were not fighting the way the Kethmori expected. They did not freeze with fear. They did not run. They attacked with a coordination and viciousness that the ancient predators had never seen. Sergeant Pete Johnson crawled through the ship's ventilation system, following the sound of fighting. His job was to plant explosive charges in key locations. As he moved through the narrow passages, he heard something that made him stop. Kethmori voices speaking in their harsh language. The universal translator in his helmet picked up fragments of the conversation. "The prey fights back. Impossible. They show no proper fear." Johnson smiled. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy's apex predators were learning what it felt like to be hunted. He planted his charges and moved on the bridge of the UES Retribution. Admiral Carter watched the battle unfold on her screens. The boarding actions were going better than she had hoped. Human casualties were surprisingly light, while the Kethmori were dying in numbers that would have been impossible just months ago. "Admiral, we're getting a signal from the second enemy ship," reported the communications officer. "What kind of signal?" It's a retreat order. They're running." Carter stared at the screen in disbelief. A Kethmori ship was actually retreating from battle? According to every record in the galactic database, that had never happened before. "All ships pursue the fleeing vessel," she ordered. "Do not let it escape." The human fleet gave chase, but the Kethmori ship was fast. It jumped into hyperspace. Just as the human ships came into firing range, "Let it go," Carter said finally. "It will carry word back to the others. Fear is a weapon, and now they know what it feels like." The battle was over in less than 2 hours. 2 Kethmori ships destroyed. 1 fled, and over 40 of the creatures confirmed dead. Human losses were 12 killed and 30 wounded. Lieutenant Martinez stood in the ruined corridor of the captured Kethmori ship, looking down at the body of the creature she had killed. It seemed smaller in death, less terrifying. She kicked it with her boot, making sure it was really dead. "How does it feel?" asked one of her Marines. Martinez thought about the question. "It feels like we just proved something important. These things have been terrorizing the galaxy for thousands of years because no one ever stood up to them." "Well, someone just did." News of the victory spread quickly through human space and beyond. Other species that had been hiding from the Kethmori for generations began to whisper about the impossible. Humans had not just survived an encounter with the galaxy's apex predators. They had won on the Kethmori homeworld. The surviving ship's captain knelt before the supreme leader of his species. The creature was ancient and scarred, with claws that had killed more sentient beings than any other predator in the galaxy. "You dare return alive from a hunt?" the supreme leader growled. "Master, the prey, they were different. They fought back. They killed our brothers. They showed no proper fear." The supreme leader's eyes blazed with fury. "Impossible. All prey fears the Kethmori. It is the natural order. Master, I speak truth. These humans are not like other prey. They hunt as we hunt. They kill as we kill. They are dangerous." The supreme leader stood to his full height of 15 feet. His roar shook the chamber. "Then we will show them true fear. Summon the deep packs. We hunt these humans to extinction." Back on Earth, Admiral Carter received reports from across the galaxy. The Kethmori were mobilizing their entire species for war. Ships were moving from worlds that had been hidden for centuries. The real battle was just beginning, but Carter was not afraid. For the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy's apex predators had met their match, and humanity was just getting started. The alarm bells rang across Earth's orbital defense stations as the largest Kethmori fleet in recorded history dropped out of hyperspace. Admiral Lisa Carter stood in the command center, watching hundreds of dark ships appear on the holographic display. "How many?" she asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. "Over 2,000 ships, Admiral," reported Captain Jake Mitchell, "and they're all heading for Earth." Carter felt her stomach drop. The human fleet had maybe 300 ships, and most of those were still spread across the galaxy. Earth's planetary defenses were strong, but they had never been tested against an enemy like this. "Signal all human colonies," she ordered. "Tell them what's happening. If we fall, they need to be ready." The Kethmori fleet moved with purpose toward Earth. At its head was a massive ship 3 times larger than anything humans had built, Intelligence. Reports called it the Void Walker, and it belonged to the supreme leader of the Kethmori species. Dr. Amy Foster ran into the command center, carrying a datapad full of readings. "Admiral, they're not just coming to destroy us. They're coming to hunt us. Every human on Earth." "What do you mean?" "I've been analyzing their fleet composition. Most of those ships are troop transports, not warships. They want to land on Earth and hunt humans the way they've hunted every other species. They want to make an example of us." Carter understood. The Kethmori were not just angry about their defeats. They were embarrassed. For 3,000 years they had been the galaxy's ultimate predators. Now a species they had never heard of was making them look weak. They needed to prove they were still apex hunters. "How long until they reach Earth?" Carter asked. 6 hours, Mitchell replied. Carter activated the planetary communication system. "This is Admiral Carter to all citizens of Earth. We are about to face the greatest threat in human history. The Kethmori are coming and they want to hunt us all. But we are not helpless prey. We are humans and we fight back." Across Earth, people heard the message. In New York, police officer Mark Wilson checked his weapon and looked up at the sky. In London, teacher Helen Brown gathered her students and led them to the underground shelters. In Tokyo, factory worker Steve Kim welded metal plates over his workshop windows. But not everyone was hiding. In the forests of Canada, hunter Jim Taylor loaded his rifle with special ammunition the military had distributed. In the mountains of Colorado, survival expert Kate Moore set traps along the hiking trails. Humans everywhere were preparing to fight. The Cathmori ships reached Earth's outer defenses. The orbital weapons platforms opened fire immediately, their massive cannons sending streams of plasma into the alien fleet. Several Cathmori ships exploded, but there were too many of them. "They're breaking through," Mitchell reported. "Landing craft are heading for the surface." Carter watched the tactical display as hundreds of smaller ships separated from the main fleet. They were heading for every major city on Earth. All defense forces, prepare for ground combat. And remember, these things can be killed. The first Cathmori landed in Central Park in New York City. A dozen of the creatures emerged from their ship, looking around at the tall buildings with satisfaction. This world would provide excellent hunting, the pack leader, a massive creature with scars covering its black skin, tested the air. He could sense millions of humans in the city around him. Their fear would make the hunt even more enjoyable, but something was wrong. The fear he sensed was mixed with something else: anger, determination, and underneath it all, a predator's hunger for battle. Major Alex Turner crouched on the roof of a building 6 blocks away, watching the Cathmori through his scope. Behind him, a team of Special Forces soldiers waited for his signal. "Remember the plan?" he whispered into his radio. "We do not fight them in the open. We use the city. Every building, every street, every sewer tunnel. This is our territory now?" Turner squeezed the trigger. His sniper rifle fired a specially designed bullet that exploded on impact. The Cathmori pack leader stumbled, black blood spraying from a wound in its shoulder. The creature roared in fury and pain. It had expected to hunt helpless prey, not to be attacked by hidden enemies. "Move," Turner ordered. His team disappeared into the building, using stairwells and service elevators to relocate. By the time the Cathmori reached the roof, the humans were gone. All across the city, similar ambushes were taking place. The humans had learned from every previous battle. They did not try to fight the Cathmori in single combat. Instead, they used tactics the aliens had never seen. In the subway tunnels, Sergeant Linda Clark led a team that had rigged the underground passages with explosives. When a group of Cathmori tried to follow fleeing civilians into the tunnels, they walked into a carefully planned trap. The explosions brought down sections of tunnel, crushing 2 of the creatures and trapping the others. As they tried to dig their way out, Clark's team attacked from hidden positions, firing plasma weapons through carefully placed holes in the walls. "This is Sergeant Clark," she reported over the radio. 4 more confirmed kills in Sector 7. The Cathmori were learning something they had never experienced before. Being hunted was terrifying. Dr. Foster watched the battle from the command center, analyzing every report that came in. "Admiral, something interesting is happening. The Cathmori fear responses are getting stronger." "What do you mean?" "When they first landed, they were confident, almost casual. But now, after losing dozens of their members to human tactics, they're starting to show actual fear. Their hunting efficiency is dropping." Carter understood immediately. Fear works both ways. If they can sense our fear, we can sense theirs. The battle raged for 18 hours. In London, humans collapsed buildings onto Cathmori hunting packs. In Tokyo, they used the subway system to move unseen, striking and disappearing like ghosts. In Sydney, they turned the harbor into a trap, using boats rigged with explosives. The turning point came when the Cathmori Supreme Leader himself decided to join the hunt. The Voidwalker landed his personal ship in Washington, D.C., bringing with him 50 of his most elite warriors. He was 15 feet tall, ancient beyond measure, with claws that had killed more sentient beings than any other creature in the galaxy. He had come to Earth to personally hunt the species that dared to challenge Cathmori supremacy, but as he stepped off his ship, he felt something that shocked him. The humans were not just fighting back. They were winning. His people, the galaxy's apex predators for 3,000 years, were being systematically hunted and killed by creatures they had dismissed as prey, for the first time in his long life. The supreme leader of the Kethmori felt fear dot in the distance. He could hear the sound of human voices coordinating attacks. They were not the panicked screams he expected from prey. They were the calm, efficient communications of predators working together. Master, one of his warriors said nervously, perhaps we should withdraw. These humans fight like demons. The supreme leader's roar shook the ground. No, we are Kethmori. We do not retreat from prey. But even as he said it, he could feel doubt creeping into his mind. What if humans were not prey at all? What if they were something far more dangerous? As night fell over Earth, the humans began their counterattack. They had studied their enemy, learned their weaknesses, and adapted their tactics. Now it was time to show the galaxy's former apex predators what real hunting looked like. The tide of battle was turning. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the Kethmori were the ones being hunted. Captain Jake Mitchell stood on the bridge of his ship as the human fleet approached the Kethmori homeworld. The dark planet hung in space like a wound in the universe, surrounded by the scattered remains of the once mighty alien fleet. Final. Approach, Captain, reported Lieutenant Sarah Martinez from the navigation station. The surface is heavily fortified, but our scouts report that most of the population has retreated to underground bunkers. Mitchell nodded. After the failed invasion of Earth, the Kethmori had lost more than ships and warriors. They had lost something more important. They had lost their confidence. Signal the fleet, Mitchell ordered. Begin orbital bombardment of military targets only. We want the Void Walker alive. Admiral Lisa Carter's voice came through the communication system from her flagship. Jake, are you sure about this plan? We could just glass the whole planet and be done with it. No, Admiral, Mitchell replied. If we want to end this forever, we need to face their supreme leader. The galaxy needs to see that the Kethmori can be beaten in single combat, not just bombed from orbit. Deep underground on the Kethmori homeworld, the Void Walker sat on his ancient throne. Around him, the last of his warriors cowered in the shadows. These creatures that had once terrorized the galaxy were now afraid to leave their own planet. Master, one of his generals said nervously, the humans have landed. Their dropships are heading for the sacred hunting grounds. The Void Walker stood slowly. He was ancient, scarred by thousands of years of hunting, but he had never felt as old as he did today. His species was dying, and it was all because of one small blue planet full of creatures that should have been easy prey. How many of our kind remain? He asked. Less than 1,000, Master. The humans have been very thorough. The Void Walker closed his red eyes. 3,000 years of galactic dominance, ended by a species they had never heard of until 6 months ago. It was almost impossible to believe. Gather the survivors, he commanded. We make our final stand in the hunting grounds. If we must die, we die as Kethmori. Colonel Ryan Brooks led the first wave of human troops onto the planet's surface. The landscape was dark and twisted, covered with the bones of countless creatures the Kethmori had hunted over the millennia. Cheerful place, commented Sergeant Kelly Davis, checking her plasma rifle. Remind me never to vacation here. Brooks smiled grimly. Stay alert, this is their home ground. They know every cave, every shadow. The humans move carefully through the alien landscape. Unlike their enemies, they did not hunt alone. Every soldier was part of a coordinated team, and every team was connected to the larger force. It was this unity that had made them successful against creatures that were individually stronger and faster. Contact ahead, reported Lieutenant Chris Johnson. Large force of Kethmori, maybe 200 strong. They're positioned in what looks like some kind of arena. Brooks studied the tactical display on his scanner. The sacred hunting grounds. Their supreme leader wants to make a statement. As the human forces approached the arena, a massive roar echoed across the landscape. The Void Walker emerged from the shadows, followed by the last of his warriors. He stood 20 feet tall, his ancient body covered in scars from countless hunts. Humans! His voice boomed across the battlefield. You have destroyed my people, shattered my empire. But you have not faced me in true combat? I challenge your strongest warrior to single battle. If you win, my people will surrender. If I win, your invasion ends here. Admiral Carter's voice crackled through Brooks' communicator. Ryan, you do not have to accept this. We can just overwhelm them with numbers. Brooks considered for a moment. The smart tactical decision would be to refuse the challenge and simply eliminate the remaining Kethmori with superior firepower. But he understood what the Voidwalker was really offering. A chance to end this war with honor and to prove once. And for all that, humans were the galaxy's new apex predators. I accept your challenge, Brooks called out. Stepping forward into the arena. The Voidwalker laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You are brave, little human. But bravery will not save you from 3,000 years of hunting experience. The two warriors faced each other in the center of the arena. Around them, humans and Kethmori watched in silence. This was more than just a fight between two individuals. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy. The Voidwalker attacked. First, moving with speed that should have been impossible for something so large. His claws swept toward Brooks, aiming to end the fight quickly. But Brooks was ready. He rolled to the side, his combat training taking over. The battle was fierce and brutal. The Voidwalker was stronger and faster, but Brooks was smarter and more adaptable. When the alien tried to use his phasing ability to pass through Brooks' defenses, the human was ready with a phase disruption grenade that forced his enemy back into solid form. Impossible, the Voidwalker snarled as Brooks' plasma knife cut another wound in his arm. You are prey. Prey does not hunt predators. Brooks dodged another massive claw swipe and struck back with his knife. You are right about one thing. Prey does not hunt predators. But we are not prey. We never were. The fight continued for 20 minutes. Both warriors were bleeding, both were exhausted, but neither would give up. Finally, Brooks saw his chance. The Voidwalker overextended himself with a powerful attack, leaving his side exposed for just a moment. Brooks struck with precision, driving his plasma knife deep into the alien's chest. The Voidwalker staggered backward, black blood pouring from the wound. You fought well, human, the ancient creature gasped. Perhaps. Perhaps it is time for new hunters to rule the galaxy. The Voidwalker fell to his knees, then collapsed. Onto his side. The supreme leader of the Kethmori was dead. The remaining aliens stared in shock. Their ultimate warrior, the creature they had thought invincible, had been killed by a human in single combat. One by one, they dropped their weapons and knelt in surrender. Brooks stood over the body of his fallen enemy, breathing heavily. Around him, human soldiers cheered, but he felt no joy in the victory. The Voidwalker had been a monster, but he had also been a warrior. He deserved respect, even in death. Admiral, Brooks said into his communicator, the Kethmori surrender. The war is over. News of the victory spread across the galaxy within hours. The species that had terrorized known space for 3,000 years was extinct. Their homeworld was empty except for human occupation forces and a few scattered prisoners. In the months that followed, other species began to look at humanity differently. They had seen what humans could do when threatened. The galaxy had new apex predators, and they wore human faces. Captain Mitchell stood on the observation deck of his ship, looking out at the stars. Admiral Carter joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Regrets? She asked, handing him a cup. Mitchell thought about the question. Sometimes. We proved we could hunt better than the galaxy's greatest hunters, but what does that make us? Carter sipped her coffee. It makes us human. And maybe that is enough. Far below them, the dark world that had once been the center of a galactic empire slowly turned in space. The age of the Kethmori was over. The age of humanity had begun. In the depths of space, other species watched and wondered. The galaxy had seen what happened to those who tried to hunt humans. Some felt grateful for their liberation from the Kethmori threat. Others felt a new kind of fear. Humanity had claimed their place as the galaxy's apex predators. The question now was what they would do with that power. The universe would soon find out.